Hey guys, it's Chris Wong. For this video, I'd like to talk about why I decided to sell CONY and FIAT. So as a disclaimer, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just a guy who's interested in building a portfolio. So I'm filming this video as of November 26, 2024, and I made all these changes in my Questrade margin account. So originally I thought about selling CONY to get FIAT, and then not realizing days later that CONY went up to $19 and FIAT went down as low as like $8 or $8.50. So timing wise for trying to max my profits, not something I'm good at, but I prefer to actually have dividends. I decided I didn't like these major jumps in the share price with CONY and FIAT, seeing that there's a huge difference in the share price in the last year compared to some of the other yield max ETFs. So I found out a few days ago that Questrade changed the margin requirement for FIAT from 30% to 50% margin requirement. So it took away potential buying power. And I actually prefer to keep everything 30%. So I actually decided to sell FIAT, even though I sold it at a small loss, and decided to move it more towards weekly paying ETFs and even ULTY. So even on margin, I'm trying to make my portfolio more safe. So even though Coinbase, or even though like CONY and FIAT had very high dividend yields for the share price, it's not something I feel comfortable to actually use the dividends to pay like major expenses like rent, or even something that's very expensive on a monthly basis. For me to feel more comfortable to use dividends or to take money out of my margin account to pay for rent on a regular basis, if it came to that, I'd rather have ETFs that pay weekly and that are based on indexes. I know the dividend yields are not as high as CONY or FIAT, and I do require more money in order to get the same dividend, but I also don't have to deal with the same volatility. The fluctuations in the indexes, I think most of the times it's around like 20%, unless there's a big crash, then it would be more than that. But so far I've seen with CONY and FIAT, the share price varied between like, say, $8 and $23 for FIAT, and probably $11 or $10 for CONY, as high as maybe $25 in the last year. All the ETFs I've seen that are based on indexes, most of them look like it was just a 20% drop if the stock market went down. So I actually would prefer to put my focus on ETFs that pay weekly dividends and that are based on indexes or based on multiple companies like YMAG and YMAX. I do admit sometimes it's very hard to focus on many different ETFs to see what would give me the most dividends or what will give me the most total return. So I actually decide to put more focus towards weekly paying ETFs. And if I feel like I'm satisfied with the dividends every single week, then I can try to move on to other yield max ETFs. For the inverse ETFs, I feel better just having less, but being a little bit more concentrated on YQQQ, DIPS, and CRSH. That way I can focus on the NASDAQ 100, Tesla, and NVIDIA. So my margin account as of right now, so all my weekly paying ETFs, I seem to have all of them covered. So the three defiance ones, WDTE, QQQY, and IWMY, I have all three of the roundhill ones. So RDTE, QDTE, and XDTE, and YMAX and YMAG. So with the other yield max ones, I do have CRSH, DIPS, YQQQ, and ULTY. So other than the weekly dividend paying ETFs, I do have something from Group A, Group B, Group C, and Group D. So at least I'm getting dividends every single week, even without the weekly paying dividends. In the future, would I consider getting CONY again if the stock price goes down? I might, just depending on how well my weekly paying ETFs go. If I'm satisfied with the dividends every single week, I may consider adding CONY back if the share price makes it worth it. If the margin requirement changes to 50%, then I won't get it on margin. I may just get it on the Wealth Simple, and I'll just eventually have a separate account on Wealth Simple and call it a fun account where I wouldn't care if I lose money on that specific account. I'm aware that if I held CONY for at least a year, then if the dividend yield is 100% every single month relative to the original share price, then the investment would be paid off in at least a year. So I know some people say, well, if the investment is paid off in at least a year, then who cares what happens to the share price to CONY? I just didn't like the fluctuations of the share price, which also affected the buying power available. When I make withdrawals out of my equestrian margin account, I actually prefer to withdraw on a weekly basis in much smaller amounts. I prefer not to wait at least a month for a massive dividend to come in, not knowing what the actual amount is. And if the share price fluctuates a lot, then it would affect my available buying power or available withdrawal amount. So if I were to purchase CONY again in the future, I'm waiting for the share price to go down a bit. So I want it hopefully below $15 because my average share price was like $15.70. And I want to treat it more like fun money, not money required to pay rent or not money required to pay other monthly expenses. I hope you guys liked the video. If you liked the video, please give me a thumbs up. Otherwise, please subscribe to my channel for future videos. Thank you guys for watching.